2, 1.
Right. Good morning and welcome to the decision session for Executive Member for Economy and Strategic Planning, Tuesday, the 23rd of March. I'd like to welcome everyone to the session, and the first item is declarations of interest. I don't have any interest that isn't already on the Council's declaration of interest on the Council website. So the next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of February 21. I agree with those, so when we're signing them in person, I'll catch up with that. Public participation is item 3. Apologies, I have received a message. I just need to confirm that people can hear me.
Hi, Chair. Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you, unfortunately.
Right.
So I just proceed with your video off for now.
Right, I'll just right, we're just dealing with these technical issues. The council system has been very difficult of late. So I suggest that I leave and come back in.
Hello?
There we go, Chair.
Right. Okay. So what I shall do.
Ready to continue when you are.
Right. Okay. Just to recap, I don't have any declarations of interest not already on the register. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting of the 23rd of February. I'm happy to sign those when we're back in West offices signing things and not having to deal with technology like this. So item 3 is public participation. I'm advised that there are no members of the public or members of the council registered to speak. I'd be grateful if an officer could confirm that.
Yeah, I can confirm that. We've got no registered speakers.
Thank you very much. So that brings us on to item 4, the one-year plan skills for employment in York. Alison Edson, would you like to speak to that item?
Thank you. I'm Alison Edson, the Skills Team Manager at the City of York Council, and I'll give you a very brief overview of the paper and appendix, which is a one-year plan, Skills for Employment in York. So working as a partnership, First thing to say is it's not a starting point of a one-year plan. We have been working together across the city since early on in the first lockdown to support both individuals and businesses through change, and it is an ever-changing picture. In December 2020, you'll recall receiving a paper that provided an update on the activity to that point around the tangible things that we were doing to support people through change. This paper focuses on the plan that has been put together, led and developed by the Skills and Employment Board in the city, which is a partnership comprising of a range of stakeholders, but to give you a flavour, obviously including yourself, Councillor Waller, and council participation, there are our FE and HE institutions, so colleagues at the colleges and universities, employers, job centre, etc. There's a wealth. So this plan, as you'll see in the appendix, has 5 key commitment areas. And it's around supporting individuals, particularly those that have been displaced from the labour market or looking to retrain or upskill. Also employers, so skill support for businesses, and that's businesses of all sizes, and that's helping them to access the national, regional and local provision that is available. The next piece is around the partnership, and that focus on being a really productive partnership. So it's making the most of the things that are coming on stream and a lot of the government announcements, particularly things that are coming into place in April and August this year. But also it's about how we work together to start to develop the frameworks and the infrastructure from a skills perspective that will help the longer term recovery. The next commitment is around education and employment and into self-employment too. So it's supporting kind of that post-16 transition piece and people that really would like to kind of enter the world of work either for the first time or to re-enter, but also really help kind of enterprise. And then finally, it's around communication and shared messaging and making it really easy for individuals and businesses to access the type of support mentioned. So there are 5 key commitments, and that last one is called York Shares. The plan itself reflects the changing both, economy, world of work, education, and kind of gives an overview of what we currently know. And as we say, we're still in that pandemic. It's a changing feast. So the most important thing through the partnership is that we are agile and responsive to what businesses and people in York need. You'll have seen the plan, and the framework of the plan takes you through each of those commitments, talks about what those priority areas are for the city, which is reflected from the work that we've been doing over the several months to build an evidence base and understand what's actually happening on the ground. And then importantly, it talks about how we're going to do that. So I don't know if you have any questions at this point.
Right, thank you, Alison. I'd like to thank the officers who've worked on this and with partners on developing a thorough review of different sectors and their needs, and acknowledging that individuals will need assistance in the city. So we do have a significant economic upheaval to demonstrate that the council and partners are responding to, so that that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that people have the jobs and the skills that they need going forward. I think the key aspect that needs to be included is the awareness that in the longer term there'll need to be more emphasis on green jobs, on sustainable development and those types of jobs. So I appreciate that in the 1-year plan you're very much dealing with the here and now, but in the lockdowns, businesses I've spoken with have taken that time to review where they are, where their business is going, where the opportunities are coming in the future, and therefore where they see the skills needs, and that's matching that with the skills providers in the city, as well as the democratic accountability of council to ensure that those things are joined up for all communities within the city. And I think ensuring that there is a inclusive growth within the response, I think that I would like to see that reflected in the 1-year plan. So I think it is important to ensure that there's thorough connectivity with scrutiny, and there was a very helpful meeting with 2 of the scrutiny boards, one which covers education and skills from that side, the other the economy in place scrutiny committee, and therefore before this is finalised, I would request that there's a further meeting so that there's cross-party discussion of that before it is finalised by the skills board, so that a wide range of members feel engaged with the process. So I think there's, Alison, you're going to confirm that there's the opportunity to redraft the Appendix A.
Absolutely, and
Right.
thank you. I did mean to touch on the scrutiny and the valuable input they've helped to shape what we've got so far.
Okay, so with the recommendations on paragraph 4 of page 5, the item bullet point 2 on page 6, I endorse the 1-year plan, skills for employment, recognising the strong partnership approach taken to understand, reflect and respond to local priorities, and the need for green jobs and sustainability and inclusive growth to be a key feature of that, and that an additional item 3, that preparation is made for a further joint scrutiny meeting in the autumn to review the plan as it goes through the final stages with the skills board.
And can I just clarify that on Councillor Waller? We're talking about the longer term plan at that point. This is the 1-year piece.
Right. Yes. So that, sorry, mixing those two. So that's the.
Oh, it's just for my clarity. Thank you.
Yes. No, the longer term plan, which is working its way through at the same time.
Wonderful. So we can endorse the 1-year plan and then the longer term piece
Yes.
in the autumn.
So it's
Thank
the 1
you.
year. Sorry, just to clarify, yes, to endorse the 1-year plan with the inclusion of reference to green and inclusive growth, and then item 3 is to ensure that the 10-year plan is discussed at scrutiny.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right, that takes us on to item 5, the very latest consultation from government on another attempt to change the planning process.
Morning, Councillor Waller. Mike
So-
Sage, Assistant Director. I was just going to say that it's another month and another planning consultation. Becky is going to talk us through the outline of the consultation and bring in Guy and other colleagues as necessary, if that's okay.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay, morning.
Good
So
morning.
on the 30th of January this year, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government published a consultation entitled National Planning Policy Framework and National Model Design Code. And the consultation runs until the 27th of March, hence why we're here today. So the consultation seeks views on draft revision to the NPPF, as we know it, the National Planning Policy Framework. There's a few minor changes in there, which are all detailed in this report. There is a couple in there that do actually cause concern and we don't agree with. That being the changes to the Article 4 and more permitted development rights, which we've previously discussed on a number of occasions that we're not happy with. So it is to...
Indeed, it was the subject of a motion to council last night.
Right, okay, so there's again a point in there that a slight amendment to the MPPF, and we're going to say that we don't agree with that if that's something that you agree with. And just minor tweaks to issues around the green belt and where development can occur. Again, we have concerns over that and we'd like to see further detail. So that's the MPPF changes. The rest of them are minor changes that on the whole are supported. Guy's here to talk you through the national model for the design code, which I think is also very important, and Guy's done quite a lot of work on this. So if I just pass over to Guy and he'll talk you through what we think about that basically. Okay, thank you.
Hello, morning, Councillor.
Good morning, Guy.
Guy Hanson. I'm an architect at the council and I manage the design, conservation and sustainable development team. Thank you for inviting us here today. The National Model Design Code, as Becky's explained, sort of sits within, and Mike has said, the planning change of the month, but it's a really complex topic to discuss, and perhaps I'll talk for maybe 10 minutes, and then it's to ask questions of me is probably the most useful thing. And I think you're probably already aware that government are in major throes of trying to change the planning system, and the National Model Design Code, it comes out of these two imperatives that government are really looking to do, which is their view that the planning system is too complex and too uncertain. That's the one big driver, and the second one is around the idea that we build too much of poor quality development that's unpopular, and so all the changes really can be seen in the light of those two imperatives, and the two things don't usually head in the same direction, which is probably why when you read all the various papers, sometimes they don't all seem to be saying the same thing. And the National Model Design Code is the government's attempt to try and say, well, these two things can be reconciled. We can speed up the planning process, we can improve certainty, we can improve quality. And in a very simplified sort of nutshell, it's sort of saying that, we used to build we didn't reinvent the wheel every couple of weeks. We didn't seek newness for the sake of newness. There were established ways of doing things, pattern book ways of designing terraced houses, and people liked it. It was popular. So we're in York, a city of a legacy of largely Victorian development of Victorian and acres of Victorian terraces. They're not all that different from each other in their sort of typology, and people like them. So why can't we sort of return to those sorts of ways of doing things? And it's I suppose the other impetus is around driving housing numbers. All these points of policy sort of cover all types of development, but the major one is about improving housing delivery. And so the idea with this is that we have a code, and we all stick to the code. And if we all stick to the code and turn the handle, we'll generate better quality development. And it's obviously slightly more complicated than that. I mean, the policy background to all of this is obviously the white paper, the planning white paper, which foresees significant planning reform. It comes on the back of the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission, which are an independent body commissioned by government to look at planning reforms.
I'm always fascinated with government defining what beauty is.
Well,
it's I think it's something that has been an aspiration for quite a long time.
Yes, and when you look at the papers here that the government have published, interestingly, they have left it pretty much to the local authority to do that. The National Model Design Code is in essence a framework document. When you look at it, it's published in two parts. There's part one is pretty much about how you go about producing a local authority design code, and it sets all the different criteria that you are to apply when thinking about this. So it's got 10 themes. Themes around movement, nature, themes that we're familiar with, and it backs them up in an earlier publication, which was the National Design Guide, which defined these themes for us. That was published in 2019, so even before the white paper, before the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission. So you could see the direction of travel has been set for some time, and this essentially gives us these 10 themes or 12 themes, I can't remember, to think about how we go about making our own design codes. And so the information that we've got here is some urban design guidance, but it pretty much says, it could look like this, it could look like that. It's up to the local authority to actually decide what content you want to have in your own design code, but the idea is that all the different local authority codes would have some coherence to them, and they would all be talking from the same language. So developers who are coming from Essex and coming up to Yorkshire, we're all talking about the same things. We've got certainty in how we in the language that we're using.
Just on that on that point, we do want York to be distinct, and I think my question to you is, you've raised the issue of people coming up from Essex. The Essex barn became Tesco's architectural signature across the entire nation, and therefore my question to you is, it's important that we respond in a way that, as you've mentioned about major development work in York in the past, is to ensure quality and sustainable design in a way that is a reasonable planning expectation on developers, and how we make a distinct York. You're aware that you're in York, and therefore what you might have designed in other towns that aren't quite where we are, that is permissible. So I think it is just because there's an expectation across members of council, members of the public, that in conservation areas in the city centre, that there's an expectation on a more careful consideration than if you were in an industrial estate. So just can you answer that question?
It is the government's intention to sort of look at the fact that the local authorities are producing their own detail matters. The idea is that local authorities will then be able to set policies around local distinctiveness, so York is different from Essex. The difficulty slightly is around how how sort of cliched that becomes as a design response, in the sense that if you codify something in the same way that you're talking about your Tesco's Essex barn, if you write it as a code and then that becomes a rule that people have to apply, they'll apply it to everything, and they'll apply it too crudely. The idea with the design code is that pretty much that if you read the code and you comply with the code, there shouldn't be a great deal of debate, and it should get approved. And if it doesn't comply with the code, it doesn't get approved. So the difficulty is coming up with exactly those detailed policies that are nuanced enough to prevent some sort of poor interpretation. The idea of a shallow interpretation of the past, a pastiche, which, in essence is what people like Simmons and Barrett's tried to do. They tried to say, well, this is the Georgian house, and it never is a Georgian house. It's got a plastic portico on the front or something. So the difficulty with it is embedding genuine good quality policies that people who are good quality developers and designers can pick up on and interpret to create things of genuine quality rather than simple stylistic sort of shallow references. And we don't, that is one of the concerns.
So it is a concern, and has been the subject of many debate in planning committee meetings. So I think the question is, how do we as an authority get to that point that there's greater certainty on what is expected, what is what will get planning permission, because it goes with the grain of a particular thought process, and therefore there's greater certainty both on the terms of the developers before they submit their applications, and also on the planning committee when it meets to consider the applications. That I appreciate there's a large amount of debate, as you refer to, Guy, but I think it's understanding how we can help to give more certainty, which I think on both sides is more productive.
Yes, I mean, I think that the fact that the government are rolling out design guides, it's up to us as a local authority to take it and take it in the best direction we can for York. And there is flexibility in the programme to do that, I think. The way that the government intend the guidance to be used, in essence, you could as a local authority decide to do nothing, in which case you would fall back on the basic framework of the National Model Design
I
code.
think we'll do more than nothing.
Yes, well, I'd hope we would, but I'm just saying that the government has given some degree of flexibility. It allows you to choose the themes that you want to take up on. So you might not want to pick up on movement. You might say, well, that's covered in our local transport plan, and it's better dealt with in a sort of numerical, tabulated sort of way rather than a graphical way. And so, we can, subject to our, the fact that we would need funding to support to produce this, which is obviously one of the major stumbling blocks.
Just on that point on transport, perhaps Becky or Mike could come in. It's how that links with what we will be doing with LTP4. So there's no point this process duplicating. It should work in parallel with consultation processes that are already planned within the authority. Oh, James has come in. So it's a key point that in sustainability terms, people will members of committee will want to understand that it fits with other policy within the council. Do you want to touch on that, James?
I'll let Becky go first, probably, but I'm happy to sort of follow up with a comment
Right.
about LTP.
Yeah, I completely agree. That is something that we need to do. We will look at that as soon as we get more information from the government on this, on exactly how the planning side of this comes forward. But obviously, we'll work with James and his team to make sure we are linked up with that. James, do you want to do the?
Yeah, and I think that's important, is that we have that single conversation with the city about these things so that they are connected. I think you're absolutely right. So you can't talk about transport in isolation. So that actually becomes a narrative about all these things, and we have policies that talk to each other and reflect each other.
Okay, whilst we're on joining up policies, clearly a key interest of the council across departments is the commitment for climate emergency, and therefore the sustainability and carbon elements. It's understanding how that joins, so that the planning process joins in with that.
I think, yeah, I think from a transport perspective, that carbon strategy sits alongside. So that single conversation piece isn't just about.
No, I was moving on from the transport, saying that we accept that.
Yes.
It's
But
the materials. It's yeah. So right.
The same is true of carbon as in the same way, though, in terms of how we address that council ambition.
Right. And so it's understanding from today how we can connect that so that we recognise within this consultation there is discussion of the transport and sustainability aspects as much as the visual aspects of the design, which I'd like to come back to how we try and establish a system that both sides understand how we're driving up quality in applications. So that the carbon element, right, Mike?
Sorry, yes, thank you. Obviously, the local plan is going through the examination process. At the time when the local plan moves forward to adoption, we can then, and Councillor Waller, as you know, we will progress a series of supplementary planning guidance documents, and that will give the detailed guidance that will bring some of these things together, linking in the local plan, local transport plan, and then moving forward into infrastructure delivery as well. But the supplementary planning guidance will be the things that people will be able to look at on a day-to-day basis to help them when they're considering bringing forward their development proposals. But clearly, until we get a local plan in place, whilst we can do work on these, they don't get the weight that they really need and deserve until you have them post adoption of a local plan. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I think that's helpful in terms of the discussion. So, Guy, I interrupted you in your analysis of the government consultation. So, if you wanted to continue.
Well, just to pick up on some of these themes, really, the code is split into these different sections, a dozen or so sections, one of which is sustainability, one of which is movement. So I think one of the challenges in producing a code, as colleagues has said, is to ensure that all these things are suited together so they all say the same sort of message, and that would be quite a significant piece of work. In terms of the design guide itself, the sort of things that it tries to do is to graphically show illustrations of things and graphically show what a good street could look like, or where to put the front of the building line, or certain issues about how to integrate ecology into proposals. And these are quite qualitative type descriptions. So I think the government, it's not quite the scary turn the handle and design pops out the other end sort of code that the government had anticipated. It's quite traditional urban design content, and it's up to us to say where we want to develop certain areas, but the code is specifically aimed at being quite graphical and quite visual, quite qualitative. It relies on the local plan for things like, cycle provision numbers. It doesn't say thou shalt have a certain amount of bicycles per dwelling. It sort of says, well, those sorts of quantitative type descriptions need to be backed up in policy. So
however, it is a question that comes up at the planning committee quite on a regular basis. So so if that can be, there can be a local understanding of that, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, I mean,
these factors to encourage cycle ownership is something that we want to make sure that whatever is being designed takes into account, well, where are you going to put your bike that's secure when you live there?
I mean, yes, I mean, part of the purpose of the design code is in essence to bring these sorts of decisions and quality impacts into the heart of plan making, and I think that's really important and is a real positive thing. We already have lots and lots of guidance out there, whether it's national guidance on urban design or local guidance, and I think one of the things that this does is to give some confidence in the decision makers that that because government are so explicit about, you really need to be making your decisions based on quality, based on, I mean, as you said right at the beginning, what they consider, beauty even comes back into planning. But the fact that there are now more stronger mechanisms to achieve this, it's about how we write the code to describe that emphasis. If you're talking about bicycles, we have a policy on bicycle provision through our highways colleagues, but within the design code itself, you could strengthen that and say, look, you need to make reference to this. It's really important, and that's a local decision that we can make. And government are giving us the tools to say that's a really important decision-making factor, instead of feeling sort of a bit tongue-tied on quality decisions and feeling that we're a bit nervous about them because the inspectorate might take a different view. If we're able to set these out and use the design code as a way of helping us set our priorities, then I think that's a positive thing.
So just on that aspect, which is a step beyond the paper today, which, because we're responding to the government consultation. Becky, do you have would this be something that you're going to bring back in a paper, a report specifically on design?
If
in the future,
yeah, I think so. I think once we have more of an indication what the government are going to release to us, and I think once we've got a bit further on the line with the local plan, we definitely will be in a position to give you more design guidance going forward.
So, and I'm conscious that there's going to be a lot of views across the whole city as to what should be contained within that. So I think it's probably best to start now, so that we're not approaching it from a standing start, so that when that report comes, there are no surprises within that, within the various sectors in the city. So I think that's something I'd like to see progressing from this. I think this introduces a lot of questions which are very helpful for people to sit and think, well, how does that work? How does that work through the planning process? So I think it's a useful framework to start saying, well, how do we apply this to York, and what's specific to the city? Sorry, Guy, but I just thought it was worth capturing that element of this response to government.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is a conversation around potential changes that are coming further down the line. The government are currently using a number of trial authorities to actually see how they develop design codes themselves, and I think it will be interesting to see what the outputs of those are, because they're the guinea pigs in the process, and the anticipated date for that, I think, is in the autumn, September, where they anticipate that those authorities will have written their own codes. I'm not sure whether the timetable will be kept to. It seems quite ambitious, but it will be useful to reflect on that and to think how each authority takes a different approach, because I think they will, and then to sort of think, well, what do we want to get out of it?
Yeah.
But obviously, there isn't a.
So if those guinea pigs are reporting in later this year, then early next year would be a good point for a review of our analysis of, well, that's an interesting idea, or that's something that we really would not want to see here. It might work there, but it doesn't in our context. So if early next year,
yeah, we do a review.
There's a review of that and how that impacts on the city as part of this ongoing dialogue with the numerous players to inform the debate. Because I'm very keen that we get this right in the city, that where there can be greater understanding and greater drawing people together, because I think people do want to do the right thing for the city. It's just that when it comes to planning committee meetings, views can be quite strong one way or the other.
Yep, agreed. They can be quite strong, but that's part of the nature of the planning process. But yeah, we can review that and give you an update and everything that's happened and where we're going to go forward with that kind of design process early in next year. That seems entirely sensible thing to do. Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this
No,
paper?
well, can I
Guy?
just ask that what Guy's done is written his whole report. The actual specific responses will be extracted on the design part of it, will be extracted from Guy's words and put into the response. But then the response to the MPPF is actually we'll actually write what was written in the exec paper. So we'll just amalgamate those two and then send them through, if that's okay.
Okay, I think if we do that, and as it was debated last night at full council, that those comments are included.
So what comment? Sorry.
That that there was a debate last night on planning.
Okay.
At full council, so
right.
I think you because that has been through all councillors, so anything relevant raised at that debate should be included in our response.
Yes, I know what that is. That's fine. Sorry, I didn't quite get what you meant then at first.
Right,
sorry,
so it's almost like
meeting.
we did our own consultation, right? So thank you for that. So I'll just put that as delegated to the assistant. So recommendation A to the executive member is asked to note the content of this report and annexes and delegate to the Assistant Director of Planning and Public Protection to submit the Council's response to the MHCLG consultation referred to in this report with reference to input from the debate at full council on the 22nd of March.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I think that's been a very interesting debate, discussion. So thank you for your work in bringing that forward. And I appreciate that in many other local authorities, the response to government consultations don't necessarily come through this process. But I think this is a more open way of doing it and encourages submission of comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that brings us on to agenda item 6, which is the quarterly economic update.
Good morning, Councillor Waller. Simon Britton, Head of Economic Growth at City of York Council. Today is quite an auspicious date, really, in terms of the COVID lockdown. It's the anniversary of the Prime Minister's final announcement that we would go into lockdown after several weeks of speculation in May. Recall your decision session on the 16th of March last year, where we talked about a wide range of things. And this is the third quarterly update that I've brought to your sessions since September of last year. It's been a difficult year for the economy, and we're still not quite clear on how the year ahead is going to pan out. But as I remark in this quarterly update, the last 3 months have actually been the most stable in terms of the economy. Although it's been 3 months of lockdown, at least we've been avoiding the constant changes in policy that have marked much of the 9 months before that, and which left businesses somewhat confused as to where things were going. We at least have got some stability at the moment, and while it's difficult for businesses in lockdown, I think they do appreciate some consistency in terms of decision making. Our work over the last year has focused on supporting as many businesses as we possibly can, getting grants out to those that have been left out of government grant programmes. And we've very much been developing our York way of supporting businesses through the last year. We've given grants to many thousands of small micro businesses in York, and as highlighted in the report, we're currently doing an evaluation of how that support has been received in the business community, which we'll be bringing to a future decision session. But initial results show actually a very positive response to our York way of supporting businesses with small grants on a regular basis. We continue to provide those through the ARG discretionary grant scheme, and indeed have money still in the bank to continue giving small grants over the coming months while we move out of lockdown. we've budgeted well and look to spend the full amount that's been given by government by giving it to those very small businesses we've been asked to support. Those businesses that have got this far, and pleased to see that that's actually been many of the businesses in York, are now confident that they are going to be able to re-emerge when lockdown lifts in the summer. But as we remarked at your last session, some challenges around mental health, and we've had some progress in the last month in implementing the decision that you made then to go ahead with a mental health scheme. Nothing to formally announce at this stage, but a lot of progress with colleagues at York St John University, and to bring a further update to a future session, next session, on how we're getting on with that. Many of our larger businesses are faring well as well, although continuing to work predominantly from home. And obviously universities are still got some challenges in terms of how they teach in a socially distanced way. Pleased to see some recent announcements around inward investment, most notably from Nestle and from some small business units as well in York. A lot of interest in businesses coming to York, and while in previous years we might have looked with some concern at the amount of office space we have in the city, the changing models that we're seeing in terms of more people working from home, a lot of businesses looking to downsize their office space actually frees up some more opportunity for York. And the very strong reputation we have as a place both to live and to do business serves us well in all of that. And we continue to see a lot of interest, say, from potential and actual inward investors in York. Notwithstanding all of that strength in the economy, we heard earlier on today about plans in terms of our one-year skills plan to support those people who are being particularly badly hit by the pandemic. There are still something like 20,000 people in York on either furlough or on the self-employed support schemes. Stats recently out from the Centre for Cities showed that York was, I think, in the top 5 of places in terms of percentage of people furloughed or on self-employment support. That does mean that employers and businesses are confident that they will re-emerge and have kept staff on their books, which explains the high level of furloughing. Those same stats from Centre for Cities show York as the place that's seen the smallest increase in unemployment over the year. Of all the 63 cities that they follow, York is the place with the lowest increase in unemployment. That is, as I've said previously, very cold comfort to anyone who has been made unemployed, and we would continue to work hard to make sure that there's good alignment between all the different agencies that are trying to support business and support individuals in York. We touch in this report on where we are with Kickstart. I won't get into the detail of that now, but that's very much live, and all the other good work that Alison's highlighted in that one-year skills plan is there to support people as they seek to find new ways of supporting themselves. The report, I won't go into all of the detail that we put into the quarterly update. There's a lot of data in the annexes. Annex 1 comes from our colleagues in the business intelligence section of the council. A lot of that data is published on the open data platform as well. I would highlight simply within that while we're seeing a lot of challenges in terms of the number of people in York, and as I say, businesses are experiencing some challenges, it's interesting to see the business startup rate remaining strong in York. There's a lot of recognition that a lot of job creation in the economy will come from new businesses and startups, and I'm pleased to see that startup ecosystem is there. The challenges are in how we support those businesses, and it's one of the issues that we've been talking with our colleagues at Make It York about how they can up the availability of support for startup businesses. The impacts of changes in border arrangements with leaving the EU. I've mentioned in the report. There's no stats available yet at York level around that, but concerning statistics nationally around
It is concerning.
Exports. York exports are particularly focused on the EU, and our trading arrangements are predominantly with EU partners at the moment. So there are some concerns around that. It would be interesting to see your statistics coming through.
I'm conscious that the Chamber of Commerce nationally is making representations on the way in which that is working for business, or not, as the case may be.
Absolutely, and in terms of our local partners, it's the Chamber of Commerce who particularly involved in that side of work.
Right.
The international department's very strong on that.
Okay.
Likewise, EVA figures and productivity figures, nothing available locally. The only other things that really I'd highlight in the report are at the end we talk about at the time the report was written, the bid ballot was in progress. Really pleased to see the fantastic result that the bid have achieved.
Yes, a very convincing result for them.
Absolutely, approaching 90% yes vote, which is almost unprecedented in the world of bids, and shows just what a great partner they've been over the year, and indeed over the last 5 years. And then really just to summarise from what I've said, the kind of emerging patterns that we have in terms of our York way of doing economic development and supporting the economy, in terms of getting support direct to small and micro businesses. Inclusion means including people, not talking to others who might include them. And I think that direct route is something that we're really focusing on. A thorough evidence-based approach to what we do, which includes lived experience. So we'll bring more to you next, your next session around our approach to engagement for the economic strategy. But that will be a very strong theme. Making sure that we hear direct from those who are most impacted. A focus beyond the city centre. We talk in the report about the work that's going on at the moment in Acomb around the future of Front Street, and also plans to do similar work in Haxby. And some good stats coming through in all of that, and collaboration really being at the heart of what we do. The stronger relationships we've built with the business networks over the last year have been one of the big pluses of what we've managed to achieve, and will very much continue into the future. So
okay, right. Thank you for that. It's a very thorough report. Grateful that all of this information is collated, and appreciate that it's from a number of different teams. So I appreciate the work that they do in order to provide information to you and to collate, and appreciate that this catalogues the extensive work that's been done to ensure that businesses are getting the support that is available, and that the York way is to make sure that we don't sit on the cash as a council. We make sure it gets to the organisations and businesses that need it, and recognising the individuals and micro businesses at the same time. So it's an important aspect, as you raise, that as we go through this phase, looking at how the economy recovers, and the strategy, the economic strategy that needs to be put in place to enable that side to start to take place as we go through. I think the message from Treasury is that this is the last of the grants. Therefore, from now on, it's very much what can be stimulated locally to provide employment opportunities and skills opportunities for those people who have lost their jobs. And note your concern, and it's grateful that there is this awareness within the team that whilst York has a strong economy and high levels of employment, for those people who are unemployed, they do need help, and it is important that this demonstrates what help is being provided. So grateful for your report, Simon, and look forward to the next one and updates in between. I think keeping an eye on the furlough figures will be vital, given the scale of that within the sector in York. Right, so that brings us on to urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business, and therefore item 7, I'm happy to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you all for your input this morning.